Geetha Sadhana Sopaana, a book published by Adhyatma Prakasha Karyalaya, Hodenarsipura, Hasan, Karnataka, India. Let us continue that book from the page 23. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Nor should the Gita teaching be seen as an unqualified acceptance of the yoga philosophy. In line with the Sankhya philosophy, the dualistic yoga school also believes that all the ills of samsara arise as a result of the combination of a real Prakriti and an individual Purusha. The special features of the yoga philosophy is their acceptance of a separate God, Ishvara, and the teaching of the eight-limbed practice, which culminates in the ultimate state and goal of the whole practice, samadhi, which is a particular type of yogic trance. It is in this state the yogis claim that the individual Purusha remains detached from Prakriti as a result of the complete cessation of all mental modifications. While in the Gita, the external practices like the place and posture for meditation are seen to be made use of, particularly in the beginning of chapter 6. The process of getting liberated through the suppression of mental modifications is conspicuous by its absence. On the contrary, the decision of the Gita is that a permanent suppression of the mental modifications is impossible of achievement. If you go into it, you will have to come out of it. As long as the mind remains as such, filled with the countless latent tendencies, vasanas, its control is said to be next to impossible. As long as one has desires for achieving and enjoying the results of his actions, karmas, purity and one pointedness of the mind cannot be achieved. True stability can arise only when the mind finally merges in the self, and it is only then that the knowledge arises that the self is the only reality and that the whole universe is illusory, so that all desires disappear completely and permanently. It is at this stage that all the limiting adjuncts of the body, senses, mind, ego, etc., would have been dissolved in self alone. It is in this state that we are told that all unhappiness disappears. It is through this Vedantic realization that the self of all of us is in fact the Lord Himself that one finally reaches the eternal incomparable bliss. This state cannot be attained by merely suppressing the mental modifications as taught in the yoga philosophy. While in the yoga school, the mind can be fixed on a variety of objects. The Gita wants us to leave aside even the deities and says that the best of the yogis is the one who meditates exclusively on Vasudeva, the light that pervades all as the self of every being. From the above, we can see that to view the Gita as merely teaching a bit of Sankhya philosophy in one place, a bit of yoga philosophy in another place, and also containing a sprinkling of Vedantic concepts here and there would result in a complete distortion and misreading of the text. The great thinker Lokamanya Tilak has already provided us with a detailed discussion on the relationship between the Gita and the Bhagavata Mata. The philosophy of the Bhagavatas refers to an ancient religious school based on certain Pancharatra texts and should not be confused with the famous and much later text called the Bhagavata Purana. However, one important point of divergence between the Gita and the Bhagavata doctrine needs to be pointed out. It was the belief of the Bhagavatas that the individual has actually come out of the Lord and that by continuous meditation on and service to Him throughout one's life, one can, through His grace, reach Him after death. While the Gita does accept constant remembrance and working for the Lord, so that the ultimate thought at the time of leaving the body is of Him, it should be understood that such an instruction is only from the perspective of a specific meditative process, upasana. Insofar as the Gita is concerned, liberation can happen only by the attainment of Lord, and this type of liberation is possible even while still in the body without the need to wait for death. Since the experience of such a realized being is that the self alone is existing and the body, etc., never existed for him, there is no such state as death or liberation after death. Next, 1.5, conclusion regarding the other systems of philosophy. From the short discussion above, it should be clear that the mere resemblance of words in the Gita with terms found in other systems of Indian philosophical thought need not delude anyone into thinking that the former had to borrow ideas from any one of them. The ancient origin of the Gita and its being an integral part of Mahabharata, the nucleus on which the great epic, the Mahabharata, in its extant form grew, has been established beyond any doubt by scholars like Lokamanya Tilak. Uh, Telang and Vaidya. So, it may not be stretching one's imagination too far to claim that certain technical words and ideas originally appeared in the Gita in the same context in which they are seen now, and the respective formulators of the various Indian philosophical systems, darshanas, picked these technical terms and expressions from the Gita and used them to form the nuclei from which they developed their own systems in detail. They were able to make use of the similarity of the expressions and terms so as to derive authority from the already extant and famous text. Secondly, merely on the basis of similarity of words, hasty conclusions should not be drawn if the truth of the matter is to be determined correctly. Even if it is conceded that everyone starts with his own preconceived ideas and reads those ideas into the text, it is not unreasonable to demand that such a bias does not blatantly transgress the scope or the obvious intent of the text itself. However, even great authorities are found to force their own meanings into the text and at the same time accuse others of the same fault. For instance, the main objection of the Tilak against the traditional commentators, including Bhagavan Shankaracharya, is twisting the text to suit their own purposes. But he has not hesitated to do the same for the word yoga, where he takes it to mean karma yoga exclusively, even in contexts where such an understanding would patently wrong. An example of this twisting may be seen in his explanation of verse 6.3, where the word yoga in the phrase for he who has ascended to yoga, renunciation of all karma is said to be the means. Obviously, cannot be referring to karma yoga. Similarly, the champions of Patanjali Yoga hold that yoga in the Gita refers to their system, and chapter 6 of the text is a source of special support for them. Even Hatha Yoga has not failed to claim this chapter for itself. Nearly half of the text, Jnaneshwari, is an elaboration of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, and mostly in the light of Hatha Yoga. A complete understanding of the yoga will leave no doubt as to where the correct import of this chapter lies, and also that the divergence in interpretations and claims contradicting the spirit of the Gita have crept in primarily because of a piecemeal examination of the text as opposed to taking the text as a whole. Only one yoga taught in the Gita. 1.6. There should not be much divergence of opinion with regard to two aspects of the Gita. First, the word yoga is used in the Gita in a secondary sense when it appears in reference to some practice, and when that practice helps the practitioner to unite himself with the Lord. For example, it is possible to meditate on anything, but the word dhyana, meditation, to entitle itself to be called dhyana yoga will have to be meditation on the Lord, and this meditation has to be a means to reach him. Secondly, in its primary sense, the term yoga as contained in the Gita refers to something singular as indicated by the Lord in verses 4.1, 4.22, 4.42 and 18.75. The debate in that case should only be as to what exactly is the nature of that one yoga and not about how many there are. To settle this issue, many people have talked of the importance of the six cardinal principles as elaborated by the Mimamsaka philosophers for the interpretation of a particular text. It is felt that the Mimamsic criterion known as frequency, abhyasa, as applied to the appearance of certain words in the Geetha, has not received the importance that it deserves. Many writers are content in merely applying the single test of examining the commencement and conclusion and of the text so as to determine its final purport. Let us take the word yoga. Here, we should not complicate our understanding by taking all the meanings of the word as given in lexicons like Amarakosha or even the great epic, the Mahabharata itself, which uses the word yoga to even have the meaning of astrology, etc. The words yoga, yogam, and yogi, not considering such cognate expressions as yukta, appear in 14 places in the Gita, of which 21 references are found in chapter 6 alone. If one were to include the word yoga in association with all other words, the total would be 107. This suggests that according to the Mimamsa criterion known as frequency, the sixth chapter should hold the key for the correct understanding of the word yoga. This idea is confirmed when Arjuna wails, "O Madhusudana, in this yoga which you have narrated to be obtained through equanimity, I do not find certitude, the mind being fickle." When the word yoga is used in conjunction with some other word, the frequency is as follows: Sankhya Yoga once, Jnana Yoga twice, Dhyana Yoga once, Karma Yoga 5 times, Bhakti Yoga once, Buddhi Yoga 3 times, Buddhi Yukta twice, Sannyasa Yoga once, Brahma Yoga once, Atma Yoga once, Ananya Yoga once, Abhyasa Yoga once, Avikampa Yoga once in Bhagavad Gita. Considering the frequent appearance of the word yoga in association with the qualifier, as contrasted with the bare word, it is proper to conclude that the principal practice of the attainment of God is denoted by the bare, unaccompanied word yoga. While the other expressions where another word is conjoined with the word yoga, that is also called yoga in a secondary sense because they are all complementary to the real yoga at their proper level of practice. The fourth chapter opens with the tradition of yoga to show that the teaching is ancient and that what was now being narrated to Arjuna was not being narrated for the first time. It's the first verse, Bhagavad Gita 4.1, and also the last verse, Bhagavad Gita 4.42, contains the word yoga in the singular as having been narrated to the son from whom the teaching has come down to the royal seers. By qualifying the word yoga with the word this, imam, in the first two verses of the chapter, the implication is that the teaching in the form of yoga must be contained in the immediately preceding chapters. It should be noted that in spite of the expression Raja Yoga being used by some commentators to describe the yoga of the Gita, specifically that which is taught in the sixth chapter, the phrase Raja Yoga is conspicuous by its absence in the text itself. Although the expression Raja Vidya, royal knowledge, and Raja Guhyam, royal secret, do appear in chapter 9. In verse 4 of chapter 3 Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Naishkarmya, the stage of non-action, cannot be attained merely by not commencing work, nor can Siddhi, perfection of the stage of non-action, be achieved by merely renouncing karma. But on the contrary, in verse 49 of chapter 18, the Lord assures us that Naishkarmya Siddhi will be attained by sannyasa alone. The two assertions can be reconciled only if we accept that renunciation of all karma is possible of achievement only under a certain set of special conditions. Not commencing work is passivity, which is definitely not sannyasa, and is said to result in tamas, sloth. The Lord says, "Let there be no attachment in you for inaction." It's also said that merely giving up work would be a lapse of one's duty. So it's also said that merely giving up work would be a lapse of one's duty. Both are therefore said to be impediments for the attainment of knowledge. It is clear that the word sannyasa in these two verses, namely Bhagavad Gita 3.4 and 18.49, should be associated with a certain set of specific conditions so that it leads to Naishkarmya Siddhi, the perfection of the stage of non action. Verse 41 of chapter 4 requires that all karma must be deposited, renounced, sannyasta in the Lord through yoga by linking all karmas to Him at all stages. The conditions that make karma a means towards the attainment of Naishkarmya, the sannyasa or renouncing of karma, are detachment toward everything that is not self, control over the senses and the mind, and a complete absence of all selfish aims. The attainment of Naishkarmya, non action, has been divided into two parts in Bhagavad Gita 6.3. The desire to achieve it, its perfection, for which the means are different. That this is not an easy process becomes obvious from the declaration of the Lord that only one among thousands even tries for perfection, siddhi, and even among those rare ones who have attained perfection, siddhi, only a few come to know the Lord as He truly is. Bhagavad Gita 7.3. The accomplished one is called as Arudha in verse 6.3, and attaining this stage is not just the giving up of activities, karmas, since passivity stands condemned in the Gita. That's why there is an insistence on the importance of knowing exactly what it is that constitutes action, what constitutes inaction, and what are the prohibited actions. As can be understood from verses 45 and 46, supported by verses 49 and 40 of chapter 18, the word non action should be understood to mean performing actions in such a way that they become equivalent to non action. This is to be achieved by performing all actions with absolutely no attachment and no as worship of Lord, from whom all inspiration for action arises in every being and by whom everything is pervaded. Such a person who can perform karma with this dexterity is extolled as one who is accomplished in yoga. This is the one who is called wise amongst men and the one who has accomplished all his duties, even while he may be seemingly engaged in a minimum of activities. So I think let us continue this in the next session. हरे राम हरे कृष्ण सद्गुरुचरणार्पितमस्तु सर्वे जनाः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु सज्जनाः सन्तु निर्भयाः ओम तत्सत् कृष्णार्पणमस्तु.